Welcome to English Buddhist Terminology. What you're watching today is the third show in the series on the basic concepts of Buddhism. In the previous two shows, I have discussed dependent origination and the Four Noble Truths. And today, we will finish on the basic concepts of Buddhism by talking about the three Dharma seals. In the previous two shows, you may have realized that while I was discussing the terms dependent origination and the Four Noble Truths, I have been using the word truth very often. Then this could cause many of you to wonder, how exactly do we define truth? And what is this truth? So today, by discussing the three Dharma seals, we will be using this as a tool to help us authenticate a theory to prove whether it's a truth of the universe or not. I will begin by the four basic characteristics of ultimate truth that has been given to us by Buddhism. So the first is that for something to be an ultimate truth, it has to be universal. And secondly, an ultimate truth has to be necessary or inevitable. And thirdly, an ultimate truth has to be true in the past. And finally, an ultimate truth has to also be true in the future. An example of an ultimate truth is death. Death is something that we all go through, no matter who we are or where we come from. So just because I am an American or an Australian, it doesn't mean that I can escape from the truth of death, since it's an inevitable process in the path of our lives. The three Dharma seals are what makes Buddhism called a philosophy rather than a religion, because this theory of the three Dharma seals does not require for someone to become a Buddhist to understand that it is an ultimate truth, because it simply applies to everything that we can see or feel or think of. I will begin by explaining the contents of the three Dharma seals. The three Dharma seals in Chinese are called San Fa Yin. And the first truth of the three Dharma seals says that all phenomena are impermanent. In Chinese, it becomes 诸行无常. And secondly, it says that no phenomena has a self. So in Chinese, it becomes 诸法无我. And the final of the three Dharma seals says that nirvana is the ultimate peace. So in Chinese, it becomes 涅槃寂静. Together, these three constitute the three Dharma seals. And if we look at the term where it says seal, seal means that all things are stamped with them. So just like a simple stamp that is stamped on a piece of paper. So there is nothing that doesn't possess these characteristics. So everything possesses the feature or the characteristic of the three Dharma seals. Furthermore, the word seal is similar to an official seal that is used to prove that a certain document is true and it's real and that it's not forged. So anything that is not stamped with the three Dharma seals cannot be considered a truth. And also, anything that does not comply or contradicts the three Dharma seals is not an authentic teaching of the Buddha. So even if the Buddha was to be heard saying a truth that contradicts the three Dharma seals, then this is not an ultimate truth. This is why the Buddha told his disciples, "Don't believe in what I say, just because I am the one who said it. We need to inquire deeper into the meaning hidden behind my words and prove whether it is right or wrong." So the three Dharma seals are another way of looking at the truths that are fundamental to reality. Let us now look at the first seal, the truth on impermanence, or the truth that says that all phenomena are impermanent. This means that all phenomena change. They never stay the same. And the idea of impermanence applies to everything in this world. So everything has to go through the process of change. Just as the Greek philosopher Heraclitus says, you can never step into the same river twice. But for us Buddhists, and even if the Buddha was to hear this saying today, he would have added that the same foot never steps into the same river twice. Why? Because the foot itself is also always changing. So you can never find the exact condition in the exact moment again. Now, everything is in a constant state of flux. So this is also a different way of saying that everything is impermanent or everything is changing. For example, the process of life is always changing. So the moment I'm born into this world, I have to be carried forward with this flow. So the change continues. After I'm born, I become older. And after I become older, there will be sickness and illness. And after that, there is death. So this is the constant change of the process of life that everybody has to go through. Not just everybody. Everything that you can think of in this world goes through the process of change. And second example is how the 4 seasons change. Throughout every year, the 4 seasons come and go. There comes spring, then summer, autumn, and then winter, and then back to spring again. So the seasons continue to change. They never stay the same. And also, plants are the same. When you plant a flower will grow. It will exist for a little while, and then when time comes, it will wilt. And while the flower goes away, the root is still there. So next year, when the right time comes again, the flower will grow, it will stay there, it will be beautiful for a little while, and then will wilt again, and so on. So this is a constant change, the constant process of change. So basically, to put it simply, it means that things are born, they abide, and then they die. So the stars in the sky, our thoughts, and all the living beings in this world live according to this theory of change. Therefore, nothing stays the same. So nothing is permanent. So everything is impermanent. There was a story that demonstrates the importance of the understanding on impermanence. Once there was a widow, and the only family she had was her son. Therefore, she put her every hope into this son. But one day, the village they live in was hit by a mysterious plague, and unfortunately, the son became ill and died. The woman became so upset that she refused to accept the fact that her son had died. So she held on to the dead body of her son and went all over the place, asking people, "Can you bring my son back to life? I love my son so much. Can you bring him back to me?" She did it as if she was crazy. So a lot of people started to feel sad for this woman. Therefore, one of them decided to take her to the Buddha because they knew that the Buddha could help this woman. So the Buddha said to her, "Dear lady, I know you have lost one of your most treasured possessions in your life. And there's one way that I can help you bring your son back to life. What I need you to do now is to go around the village and look for a thing called the lucky grass. And this lucky grass has to come from a household within which nobody ever died. And if you can find it, I can help bring your son back to life." So the woman did as the Buddha told her. She went door to door searching for this thing called lucky grass. She asked every family, "Has anyone ever died in your family?" And she always got the same answer in return, which was yes. And after doing so, she started to realize that death is an inevitable process in life. So she went back to the Buddha and said, "Dear Buddha, I now understand that everything is impermanent in this world." So from this story, we can see the importance of impermanence and that it's simply a natural process in life. And what we need to do is simply let things change and let things go, because we know that the happiest life is lived within a life that operates not around suffering, but happiness. So this is a story about impermanence. Now, we're going to go into a short break, and after the break, we will continue. So don't go away. Hi, welcome back. Let's continue on the topic of impermanence. There are two basic kinds of impermanence that I can offer you today. The first one is called momentary impermanence. A moment is considered as the smallest unit of time. So basically, it's an extremely short period of time. Just as the record of investigations of mysteries says that a moment is as long as one thought. A single snap of the fingers contains 60 moments. So if I just click my fingers like this, then 6 moments would have already passed. That's how short a moment can be. Furthermore, the Reign of Treasure Sutra says that the deluded mind is like so much running water. It rises and falls without ceasing. Like lightning, the moments come and go without ceasing. Therefore, our minds and our perceptions are constantly changing from one moment to the next. So that not only are our minds changing, but our bodies and everything in this universe are also constantly changing from one moment to the next. So when we look at things changing from one moment to the next, think about how short this moment can be. And if it really is what I've said before, if when I click my fingers like this, 60 moments pass, then imagine how many changes that we would have gone through in one day. You can do the calculation. Now, the second of the two basic kinds of impermanence is called periodic impermanence. Periodic impermanence is basically an accumulation of momentary impermanences, which is the first kind of impermanence that we have just talked about. So phenomena do not just fluctuate amongst different status, but they actually change from moment to moment so fast, so much that after a long time, nothing about them really remains the same. And by understanding the first Dharma seal here, after we have discussed the different kinds or aspects of impermanence, it is important because once we understand or recognize the brevity of life and the impermanence of all situations, we will feel motivated to dwell even deeper into what the Buddha is trying to teach us, which is the truth of this world. Therefore, impermanence should not make us feel hopeless or pessimistic. Rather, it should give us more hope and make us even more aggressive in appreciating our time on earth, our life on earth, and feel grateful that as difficult as it is, every moment of life is worth living. There is a story that demonstrates how short life can be. This happened during the Buddhist time. In the Buddhist time, members of the Sangha were required to go out and beg for food each day. And on this very day, after members of the Sangha have finished begging for the food and they have finished eating the food, they sat down and in front of the Buddha and they got ready for the Buddha to start a Dharma talk. So the Buddha then said to them, "Dear bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, please tell me the purpose of you going out to beg for food every day. So they answered, Dear Buddha, we go out to beg for food, so this food can help sustain our physical body. So this body will help us continue on the road to spiritual cultivation so that we can attain Buddhahood. The Buddha said, very well. Then my next question for you is to please tell me how long life can be. So one of them answered, life is like the moment a flower grows and then wilts. It's very fast and it changes very quickly. Therefore, life is impermanent. But the Buddha said, you have understood very little about what life is and how long life is. There's got to be more, so please tell me more. So someone else answered, well, life is like a firefly. It is born today, then it dies tomorrow. Therefore, the length of its time only goes for one day. Once again, he said, you have still not understood enough about what life is. There has to be more than that. So someone else said, life is as short as the moment sunlight shines on us. And the moment that sunlight ceases to shine on us, life goes away. Still, the Buddha said, there is more. Then someone else, another person, answered, well, life is like the morning dew. Once the morning passes, life also ends. The Buddha said, this is still not yet a complete answer. There is more to how long or where life exists. Then finally, one of his disciples said, Dear Buddha, life exists between each breath, and that is how short a life is. And then the Buddha finally said, yes, you have understood the essence of life. And this question and answer tells us that life is short. Therefore, it is important for us to live every moment to its fullest. So we must seize the day. Let us go on to the second truth of the three Dharma seals, which is the truth that no phenomena has a nature of self or the self nature. So since everything is impermanent, since everything changes, therefore nothing has the nature of self. For example, all things or phenomena depend on each other in order to exist. So nothing exists on its own. So nothing is independent. Therefore, since you rely on other things to exist, you cannot really call yourself a self. Take my hand as an example. It's a combination of flesh, blood, and bone, etc. So is this really a hand, or is it simply a combination of these conditions? And we know that once the conditions fall apart, it will no longer be called a hand. So basically, nothing has any attribute that will endure over long periods of time. Eventually, everything changes. Therefore, nothing can be said to have a nature. So there is no self-nature. There's a false impression that people have about the self. And sometimes, even if we say that we believe that the nature of self or the self-nature doesn't exist, we still act as if we believe that it's there. Because we're always changing in the same way, just as everything else is changing. So at the same time, while this belief is planted within our mind, what seems solid in front of us seems real to us. And we will always be thinking about what I am or what I see. I see the things around here, or I am sitting here, or I have this thing, or I do this, or I do that. This clinging to the self is very strong within all of the human beings. And there is another false belief that the soul is eternal, as most of the world's religion maintain the exact opposite view towards this idea of the non-existence of the self-nature. So people from other religions will claim that there is an absolute, an eternal, and unchallengeable authority that has created everything in this world. Therefore, he has created us. But Buddhism denies self-nature in two ways. For one thing, there is no self-nature in a human being. So most people are very attached to their bodies. This attachment is what leads them to believe that there is something absolute, or there is an essence or nature that exists inside of them, which is real. But we must understand that the body is merely a manifestation of our karma. So it is a delusion caused by a brief congregation of the physical and mental components of existence. Just like an example of my body, like I've said before, there is the bone, the flesh, the blood, the sinew, and everything else that constitute the body. But once again, we know that once they fall apart, our body dies. So this is no longer our self. Therefore, the body is not our self. There is a story that demonstrates the idea of self. Once there was a traveler who was traveling very late at night and could not find any accommodation. So he stopped at this abandoned temple, and he decided to stay for a short night and continue his travel. He went into this temple and found a place, a pile of grass underneath the table, and he decided that it would be his bed for the night. Therefore, he lied down and decided to get to rest. Not long after he lied down, this short ghost jumped into the temple with a dead body carried on it. And as the ghost was to start to eat this dead body, the door sprung open again, and then a larger ghost came in. Do you want to know what happens after that? Stay with us, and I will continue with the story after the break.